Why do you think that the UFC crowd in itself loves Trump so much?
Because he's the biggest fighter America's ever seen. That guy's a freedom fighter.
That's great.
So, you know, we really respect him in the UFC because we know how hard he's sacrificing his own life to give us our freedoms and make sure this country doesn't turn into a communist country. So you look at the comparison between him and Biden. Biden can't even ride a bicycle. The guy's frail. You saw him at the border the other day, like just could barely walk, you know, and people, you know, the border controller like escorting him. And then you got a guy like Trump. He was in Georgia at a rally all day, freaking giving all the Georgian people freaking, you know, great motivation, inspiration. And then he's on a private jet to Miami with that type of energy, walking into the crowd. The whole arena's on their feet for him. So come on, pick your fighter. You want a guy that can't even freaking walk to the border, or you want a guy who's all around the country, loves middle America, and is fighting for freedoms here in America?
So, the UFC crowd just appreciates a fighter and is pro-American. Is that basically what it comes down to?
Yeah, and someone who's confident and brash and is not afraid to go against the grain. You know, he's called out the fake news media. He's called out all the fake narratives going on, this woke ideology in America right now. And people respect him for that. You know, he's put his own life and his lifestyle on the line. He's a multi-billionaire. He could just be on a private island on his yacht just doing whatever he wants. But no, he wanted to join the fight. And look at what the fight is costing him. You know, hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars to be in this fight. And he's doing it because he wants to see America first. He cares about this country more than he cares about anything.
Now, you know, whether it's the E. Jean Carroll lawsuit, and then there was the second lawsuit that came down the pike. That was
the New York.
Was that the New York?
One?
Yeah, it's the New York inflated asset lawsuit, whatever that. The guy has to pay almost $500 million. Like, this is what his reward is for trying to fight. So, by the way, did you see the State of the Union address, Joe Biden?
Yeah, just screaming the whole time like a little child. Yeah.
Did you guys see the State of the Union?
None
of you guys? Pixie?
I saw parts of it.
Okay.
No,
What'd you think?
They juiced them up pretty good, and he actually spoke the whole time
instead
of slur.
What'd you think?
I mean, at least from the parts that I saw, I enjoyed. I do have one question in particular. What freedom do you feel like Trump has fought for? I'm just curious. Like, because you said he's fought for freedom. So what freedom has he fought for, to be specific?
I mean, you know, he supports law enforcement, military, the people that fight for our freedoms in this country. You know, Joe Biden, he's sending them to these senseless wars, to fight these wars just because they make so much money in the military-industrial complex. So he's also fought for our freedoms as everyday Americans. Look at inflation. Look at our economy right now. Our economy's destroyed. You think our economy is doing good right now under Biden?
I mean, at least from like the statistics I've read, when it comes to like inflation actually going down, more employment, especially as we like have gotten further and further away from COVID, like it has gotten better, whether people like to admit it or not. That's not to say things are perfect under the Biden administration, but that is to say that I think people feel the effects are worse than they really are when you just look at like the pure data.
What about our border? What about, you know, girls like Lake and Riley that are being murdered by the illegals that are coming across the border?
That's really interesting because I'm pretty sure the story that you're specifically referring to, you're talking about the woman who was like raped by the cartel supposedly.
No, she was on the college
campus, just randomly attacked, randomly killed by an illegal.
On a run.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because like Biden actually recently was trying to pass like one of the most like restrictive, even I didn't agree with this bill, but one of the most restrictive bills when it comes to like border control. And Republicans specifically shot it down, saying that no, like this is an issue that they want basically Trump to pass instead of Biden.
It wasn't because billions of dollars were being sent to Ukraine and being sent to other places. I believe a very small allocation of that bill actually went to the border versus Ukraine. Adam, do you know the numbers off the top of your head? I know we talked. Like what percentage of money went to the border of the border bill, and what percentage was going to Ukraine?
The $100 billion border bill, but only $20 billion was allocated to the border. It was $60 billion to Ukraine, a portion of it to Israel, a portion of it to Taiwan. But that's what they do in Congress is they just basically, you know, try to package everything together. And then they try to do standalone bills, and we'll see what happens with that. But there's no doubt. I mean, Pixie, listen, I've been critical of Biden. I've been critical of Trump. I'm very in the middle. It's like kind of when you're a host, you kind of. It's more beneficial to be an umpire and a judge than pick a side. That allows me to have conversations flow. I get it. But there's no doubt that the border situation, like forget about what side you're on, forget about you being a progressive, forget about being a MAGA. The border situation is a fucking mess. Yeah. Could you at least admit that?
Well, yes, but the whole point of that, or the whole point of what I was saying, is that we had one of the bills that would have been most restrictive when it came to like border control, and Republicans shut it down. Now you can say, oh, they shut it down because some money was like going to Ukraine.
That's not
but
most.
Still, a big portion of money was still
most of the money was being sent overseas for wars that outside don't pay even.
It matters
that doesn't matter because
money.
the point is, even if you think most of that money is going to Ukraine or whatever, a good chunk that would have absolutely changed the border situation was not passed.
I think
you guys said no
that,
to everything.
So you're saying they did that
like
to politically posture just so Trump can be the one to solve it? You don't think that it has anything to do with the fact that it was a gross mismanagement of funds being sent overseas?
You could literally Google it. You could literally Google Republicans saying specifically, no, this is an issue we must hold back on. Which is insanity.
Which you don't think it's because it's a mismanagement of funds. Maybe that's why it's an issue they want to hold back on, because they're saying we're going to fix this in the correct manner that also doesn't fund these bullshit wars we don't believe in.
Also, why do you guys believe this is a bullshit war? Let's start there.
Oh.
No,
because,
let's go there.
Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why.
Russia is one of the biggest adversaries of the United States. They're invading another free nation.
Hey,
they are literally violating sovereign Ukraine.
Why do you care about what's going on in any other country but your own?
Why do I? Because those are people, and also
those are people.
This has to do
What about people here? We have cities that are rotting. That people are squatting on land. That are criminals are coming here, and the crime is rising. We have to care about America first. We need to close our border. No other country just allows illegals to come in.
Every single time Republicans talk about this, and they say we have to care about our own people. We have to care about our own people. Yep. When it comes to like welfare programs, when it comes to programs that alleviate aid, SNAP, even the childhood tax credit,
that's not helping people.
They have voted them down over and over again. So do not tell me that Republicans care about the general populace when it comes to bills that actually help relieve poverty. They have said no.
No, welfare doesn't help. It hurts.
I'm sorry, but almost all the data that has to do with like welfare has shown it's decreased childhood poverty. It's increased in educational outcomes in the long run.
It's increased dependency on the government. It's increased people not getting married.
Don't get to choose
people having
who parents they have. Children don't get to choose if their parents are going to be wealthy or not. So yeah, you can say like, oh, increases dependence on the government. I do not give an F about that. If at the end of the day it means that child is going to be able to have food on its table, is able to get a better education, and break the cycle of poverty in the long run.
They don't. They actually
do.
Let me give you some just some food for thought. Then I want Colby to come back with some questions for you, and then Farah, I don't know if you have anything, and obviously you want to weigh in on this.
Yes, I would love to interview on
this. You're talking to somebody. Here's who I am. I'm someone that is willing to evolve. Okay, I thought this. Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, let me change my position. Oh, that's a good fucking point. I didn't think about that. Thank you. And sitting next to PBD, doing the PBD podcast for the last 4 years, believe me, he's changed my mind on a few things. Everyone should be at least willing to accommodate your brain to grow and change positions. So I used to think that minimum wage was good. Increase the minimum wage. Of course, people need a living wage. But what happens, I didn't realize, and I'm now adamantly against raising the minimum wage, is that what happens is you think that raising the minimum wage is a good thing. But you know who's going to end up paying more?
Everybody.
Is the customers. Because of businesses, like right now in California, there was the Fight for 15. I remember that. I actually have a buddy of mine, Haitian friend of mine, that was advocating for the Fight for 15. And then all of a sudden the Fight for 15, guy that I've grown up all my life, I went down there, I interviewed all these people, a lot of immigrants, a lot of people that can't really speak English, a lot of people working, doing, odd jobs at fast food restaurants, at the airports. And then all of a sudden it went to the Fight for 20 in California. And then there was a Democratic congresswoman running for senator, Barbara Lee, I believe her name is.
50.
You know what'd she say?
That she wanted 50.
She said, I want to fight for a $50 minimum wage. You know how much money that is a year? Wow. Times it by 2. It's $100,000 a year. And at some point you have to be like, what the fuck is going on here? Welfare. Okay, we got to take care of people. They're poor. What happened? What happens is you become addicted. It's like drugs. Oh, yeah. So welfare skyrocketed under LBJ and the Great Society reform. This was in the early 70s. And what happened was it made, and shout out to my black queens out there, it basically it made black women dependent on the state. They said, I don't need a man in my life anymore. I'm just going to get welfare from the state. And you know what happened? The single motherhood, the stats have skyrocketed. You know what country is leading the entire world in single mothers? the United States of America, and it's not even close. On average, 40% of children are born to single mothers at this point, and that's 25% of whites, it's 60% of Latinos, and 70% of black children are born to single mothers. And you know, they say that the number one indication that a child will go to jail, have problems, have learning problems, end up like being sexually abused. Every single stat, you know the number one stat? Not having a two-parent household, not having a father in the house. So on the surface, all I'm telling you, Pixie, is you think on the surface these things are good. Welfare makes sense. Minimum wage makes sense. But when you peel back the curtain and go down, almost like the Andrew Tate thing, you're like, yeah, I don't know, maybe I was wrong. Well, that's all my thing.
There's a couple of things to like break down when it comes to the whole idea of like, oh, welfare, is it good or is it bad? I think that when it comes to like single parent family homes, that's bad, but you can also see that skyrocket like after the war of drugs, like a lot of black men were like purposely like targeted and imprisoned. I don't think it's fair to...
Okay, sweetheart, but that's a very small percentage.
No, you said, didn't you say 60% of single mothers are black women?
70%. We'll find this stat. Malik, I got it for you. Exactly. Go ahead, keep talking.
So what I'm trying to say is that when we look at like, oh, like the war on drugs and how like those minority like communities started getting like basically attacked more or, you know, arrested more, basically that's also when you see like a skyrocket of single family homes. So I don't think it's necessarily fair to say completely it's welfare. I think there has been like historical events in the United States that have like led to more black men like leaving the family versus, oh, just like welfare being like, oh no, like now I get to live off of this. Welfare usually is not enough to really thrive on. I agree that...
But that's the point. They give you just enough that you don't have to do shit.
But then they give you SNAP and then they give you all this
and
stuff.
Then they give you food stamps and SNAP.
And then they sell it and then they do whatever with it. I don't know how many like people you've actually experienced with that do this, but do you not recognize the correlation of when all these things were implemented and how well the black community was doing and how the fatherlessness was then compared to now? Like to say that it wasn't welfare or to say that it was because there were, you know, drugs were just attacking black communities. Like there was a correlation. They were doing better than white people actually. Yes. And then whoop, when all of that turned upside down on its head. Again, I don't know if you've had any like relationships with people that have talked to you about what they do with their welfare, their food stamps or all this kind of stuff. I do, and it's not pretty. They game the system, they work it, and it's not cute. So to say that just like that's the only way that they're going to get food, I've seen it firsthand. It is way more damaging than it is helpful. 10-fold, 100-fold.
Let me get Toria's perspective right here. Malik, by the way, when you're ready, when she's done talking, pull up please stats, and I want Colby to weigh in on this. Go ahead.
So I want to start off by saying that you're coming from a place emotionally where you want to care about these people, and that's great. The fallacy that is often purported throughout the media is that the things that you believe in are going to help these people, and unfortunately it's not. But what's happening is these illegals that are pouring in are taking that aid that should be going to the people that really need it, especially in the inner cities, right? So like in New York right now, you've got people that are illegal aliens that are coming in getting these prepaid credit cards and, you know, nothing's happening. They're staying in luxury hotels. It's a whole situation that's happening. And I want to comment a little bit on Trump's accomplishments. You know, most people don't know this, that he was originally a Democrat years ago, and he was going to run under the Reform Party, and he was friends with people like on The View and Oprah and whatnot, and he actually has a book published about all the letters that these people wrote to him, like Happy Birthday, and it's actually, I haven't read through the whole thing, but I've seen some of the letters. It's pretty cool. Tucker Carlson recently had an interview with Vladimir Putin, and he got into a lot of the history of like our defense systems and the things that are happening around the world. And one of the things he said was that he advocated for a unilateral defense system, which means that he wanted like all the countries to kind of come together, work together in our defense. Like, why are we spending money on these wars, funneling money into Ukraine when it's really just funding illegal activity, which you can look at if you want to check out Marco Polo. Marco Polo did the whole Biden laptop report. You know, most people wouldn't know that about Putin. I didn't either. And he also talked about wanting to join NATO, and Bill Clinton told him no. You know, he at first said yes, then he retracted it. So
who no?
Bill Clinton initially said yes to Russia wanting to join NATO back in the early 2000s, and then he went back on it. It was 1999.
The whole point of NATO was to stop Russian aggression. So why would?
Well,
I don't even understand that.
Well, it evolved into now they're, you know, taking over territories that Russia never agreed to have them being militaristically involved there. So before you question what he's done, we had world peace when he was in office, and he signed various things like the Abraham Accords, and he respected other cultures, which is what the Democrats purport to do, but they really don't. They use other cultures and they start wars for their own financial gain. I mean, you saw members of Congress invested in stocks before the war in Israel and Palestine, correct. So, they're trying to make money off of this. And I can say that there's definitely bad on both sides. It's like one bird with two wings. And Donald Trump's actually a man of the people. He's not trying to be Republican. I'm very glad that Laura is now the co-chair of the RNC. I think there's going to be a lot of shakeups there. We've already fired, I think, like 60 people since she got in. Don't quote me on the number. But they're really advocating
Ronna McDaniel's
people.
Position at the RNC.
And Donald Trump fought more for blacks and gays during his presidency than Obama did. And actually, there was a speech at one of the HBCU schools, like just thanking Trump. And people don't want to see this. I've gotten suspended for posting these videos. So I think that you actually might be better off under him, and you don't even know it, and that's what they want you to think. Well, so I want to say I respect your opinion, and you're allowed to think like
Malik,
that.
Pull up some of these stats. Well said, by the way. Well said. I'm going to give you your chance to have a rebuttal, but I want to show you these stats just to kind of put some numbers behind what's going on, because, the problem that I have with the Democratic Party is they'll tell you what you want to hear, but sometimes you got to hear the brutal truth. And the problem with Donald Trump is, and some people, I think this is why maybe this time around he's actually going to beat Biden, is people didn't want to hear what he had to say and the tough rhetoric that he had. But I think, what does they famously say? Fool me once, right? Shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Pull up some of these stats, Malik. No, I sent it to you on Slack. Did you get them?
Not yet.
Oh, you didn't get them yet?
I just got this right.
You got it?
Yeah.
Okay, pull those things up. And this will kind of basically talk about the welfare state and the single parent household and children being born to single parents. Let me know when you got that, Malik. Because the numbers are pretty shocking, because it just basically shows you might have the best intentions, but it ends up backfiring. So did you have all three? Yep. So we'll go one by one. In what year was that? 1960? Can you guys see?
1930. 1930.
No, but what year does it start to the war on poverty begin?
60, yeah.
Okay.
1964.
So 1964, LBJ, who took over from JFK when JFK was assassinated, LBJ began the war on poverty. He says, here's what we're going to do. We're basically going to create a welfare state. These women can rely on the government, right? Kind of socialism right there. Rely on the government. And then all of a sudden, black women are like, well, I don't need, if I have more kids and they're going to reward me for being a single mother, and they're going to pay me more for each kid, rather than having this dude in the house, because Pedrino is actually right. There was a higher rate of blacks being married than even whites at that point, pre-1960s.
Success in general.
So then pull that up, Malik. Boom, skyrockets. And now it's at what number here? I got to get my fucking eyes checked. I don't know.
40.6.
40.6%.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the national average. National average, okay? So it's not just blacks that are on welfare. It's all sorts of people. We all know the poor whites out there in Appalachia. We know what's going on. So 40%. But it shows a couple more of these stats. Show the stat about by race in America, and then we'll do worldwide. Pull that up. Okay, boom. Punch in on that. So 4 in 10 children in America are now born to unwed mothers. Would you agree with what I'm saying, the premise that the best indication a child will do well and child will succeed is under a two-parent household? Would you agree with that?
I agree with that, but I also think it's important to take into consideration when it comes to these stats that correlation does not mean causation. Just because welfare was implemented does not mean that, that's why people started being more in single-family homes. Divorce has become less stigmatized. That can contribute to it.
Why is it more specifically in that demographic that was doing so well prior?
Yeah.
Well, that's where I mentioned the war on drugs as well.
It's cool to say smart little buzzwords like correlation doesn't mean causation. I don't know what that means, but here's what I can tell you. These things skyrocketed since 1960. Okay?
Yeah, but we can also...
Whites, what does that say?
She's
29%?
saying that doesn't mean
All
anything,
America,
that there could be
40%.
other
Hispanics,
factors.
53%. I apologize. I said 60, and I actually underplayed the black. There's no doubt, whether it's correlation equals causation or whether it's like, what was the word the other girl, the other was like, the zeitgeist. I'm like, baby, nobody knows what zeitgeist is. What are you saying right now? Your friend or your old friend. And then pull up the last thing. If you're like, okay, correlation, causation, all right, cool, I gotta use the thesaurus to know what's going on here. Just look at this map right now. The US has the highest share of single parenting in the world.
Not looking too good.
25%. So not a good look for America is all I'm saying here. That's all I'm saying. So I'll give you one perspective and I want to get Colby's way in it. You ever have a coach in sports that you like him more, but he doesn't get the best out of you. But then there's a coach that he's a fucking dick, but he gets the best out of you. So in high school, my senior year, we had a really good basketball team. I went to a really good private school, Miami Country Day. I think you were there at one point for some reason. Someone said they saw you there. I don't know. Really? Tom Brady's kids go there. I don't know. You're probably making an appearance. You know what I'm talking about.
Supported.
We were supposed to be this great team and win the district and do all this stuff. Dude, halfway through the season, we're in last place. Everyone's like, what the fuck is going on here? But the coach is this really nice guy. Halfway through the season, coach gets fired. The new coach comes in and he's like, we're going to clean up ship up here. If you fuck up in practice, run it again. You're running more laps. You're not eating healthy. You're not working out. And all of us are like, dude, this guy is such a fucking dick. But you know what happens is we got better. We got more unified. We hold each other accountable. We stopped cutting corners. We stopped saying like, I don't care if I like him or not. We started winning. What happened is we won districts. And I would correlate that with Donald Trump. The coach, you might like the Democratic Party. You might like a Joe Biden or Obama better because they tell you nicer things and you think they're nicer. I would genuinely say that Obama or Biden are actually probably nicer people than Trump. Like Joe Biden, for all his flaws, doesn't seem like a dick, in my opinion. Most people would say that. But the difference between Trump is this guy just gets shit done. And a lot of people are uncomfortable with that. People are like, the mean tweets and what he has to say. But sometimes you need an asshole coach that you don't necessarily like to get shit done. Have you ever had a coach like that? Like, have you ever had these scenarios?
Sure.
What's your experience? Not even Trump, just like a coach who was a dick but got the best out of you versus a guy maybe who was just nicer. What's your experience with that?
Yeah, the guys that really implement that discipline and structure and they're down your throat about it, that this is the way, this is how it has to be done. No, you're not going to be able to get a participation trophy.
Yeah.
No, it's, there's only two genders, these type of things, and they're the way they coach you with that intensity, like that's how men need to be pushed. That's the toxic masculinity, dude. We don't need to feminize men these days. We need to emasculate them.
And where that comes into geopolitics, you're talking about the war, you're talking about Ukraine, is you have to admit, listen, the beauty of where I'm at right now is the ability to reason. You just have to look at the situation. There was no wars under Trump, okay? Yeah, the mean tweets said not nice things. Maybe he's grabbing some things when you're not looking, the locker room talk. But there was peace and prosperity, okay? And some mean tweets. We look what's going on in Biden, this nice senile old man who's got a poor memory but a good heart, as the district attorney had to say. There's a war in Ukraine and Russia. There's a war with Gaza and Israel. Who knows what's happening with Taiwan?
The Afghanistan withdrawal.
Border, the Afghanistan withdrawal. So you just look at the facts and be like, yeah, I don't like Trump. Like if you're talking as like even someone like you, yeah, I don't like what he has to say, but we're doing better from it. That was my coach in high school. I don't like this fucking guy, but we're winning. That's all I have to say about that. Response?
There's a lot of things to go down. I don't view, Trump originally spoke about wanting to get out of NATO, which I think basically the Putin administration was thinking about when to invade or when would be most prestigious. And when Trump didn't win a second term, they said let's still go. I think if Trump won a second term, they would have still invaded Ukraine. And the reason why I believe that is because you could even go to the Tucker Carlson video and interview. Putin and / Russia is basically an imperialist nation. They believe that Ukraine should be part of Russia, that they should have never been let go of the USSR. I think this idea of he wouldn't invade it under Trump, I don't think there's no real way to prove that. And
yeah, there is.
Well, no, there isn't.
He had respect. Putin, the way Putin talked about Trump, he had respect. He would never lift his finger.
It's not a question about respect. It's a question about if you believe you are entitled to this nation. And that is what Putin has repeatedly talked about.
So I want to add,
yeah, go ahead.
A coup began in Ukraine in 2014.
Yeah.
So the war technically started in 2014, and I actually learned this recently too. So in 2022, when Putin decided to act back, he was actually acting in defense. It was not a offensive move, if you want to talk about it like play.
What do you mean by, like, a coup happened in Ukraine?
A coup happened in Ukraine. They had someone removed, they had someone installed, and it wasn't what, the people wanted. And we're seeing that now across the world. You got Pakistan. Imran Khan is jailed right now. Jair Bolsonaro, is not allowed to run again until 2028. So all around the world, we're seeing like almost this new world order that's trying to emerge, and they're for themselves, they're not for the people. And I firmly believe that what's going on in Israel right now is about nation heads, it's not about civilians.
Do you believe Putin is for the people?
I do. I actually watched a lot of his videos. If you translate them, it's all about traditional family values and like wanting a unified group of people. And the term Ukraine actually meant someone who was on the outskirts. So it used to be a group of people who was kind of like on the edge of that country, and they tried to weaken that area because, as we know, the borders are so important, and if you weaken that region, they're susceptible to attack.
Yeah, I do not think Putin is for the people. There's like clear evidence of him basically tampering with like when it came to like voting in for the Russian prime minister, for the president, whatever. There's clear evidence showing that there was like tampering there in favor of Putin. I think a person for the people would be for democracy and for like the people's general votes.
Was this evidence written by Christopher Steele? Or
I'm talking about the fact that like he won over like 110% of the vote, which would indicate that you would have to, right? Because that number is like literally impossible.
So the videos I've watched of Russia recently, it's actually really interesting because I've never been there. But Tucker Carlson went there, and their McDonald's serves chocolate cake. Like, come on, guys, this is great. Their McDonald's.
That's
was
how
great.
you know they're winning.
Their
McDonald's, cake at
their McDonald's was great.
No, we can shut this podcast out right now because McDonald's is serving chocolate cake in Moscow.
And
Mic drop. Chocolate cake drop.
There was the groceries there are a lot cheaper than here. Like him and his producers went, and they actually bought groceries and compared like how much money you would spend here versus there, and how much you would get for that amount of money, which is brilliant.
Yeah, and, but before we start doing chocolate cake and groceries and bakeries and stuff, you have to understand the GDP per capita in Russia is minimal compared to the United States. So if you want to go dollars for dollars, it's...
However...
Okay, but let me just make this point, because I want to do more. We got 15 minutes left, and I want to get Colby's perspective, something he's been talking about. Look, here's all I want to say. There's people that think that we should defend Ukraine and defend NATO. I get it. There's people who think, dude, I got nothing to do with this, and somehow they're fans. I'm not a fan of Vladimir Putin. I actually think that he just killed his #1 political rival, Alexei Navalny. But here's my question to you guys. If you don't think that we should do anything, or you think we should keep funding Ukraine, I think I'm singling you out right now, is when do we stop? Meaning, we just spent trillions of dollars in Afghanistan and Iraq. We got nothing from it. Iraq is a failed state. It's now a fucking Shia state run by Iran by proxy. Afghanistan, we saw those videos, right, Colby?
Yeah,
like the Taliban's running the show again still. Russia is pumping out more weapons than the EU and US combined. So even if we continue this fight to somehow win Ukraine, this is something I've had to adjust on. How much money are you comfortable giving Ukraine? Cool, we give them 60 billion. I think we've already given them 100 billion, right, Colby?
Oh, yeah, something like that, 150.
Okay, so now it's 160 billion. Are you comfortable giving them 200 billion? Are you comfortable is it a blank check? Is it a trillion? Is it Afghanistan? At what point, as someone who is like, at least initially, we were all like, yeah, we kind of can't just let, since World War II, a sovereign country has not been invaded. I get that. The United States must have soft power and have to spread democracy and freedom around the world. That's what we stand for, right? That's what we talk about here. Yep. But at what point do we just give a blank check to Ukraine? Because a lot of people make sense here. They're like, dude, our borders are a mess. Our situation's here a mess. And you want me to care about Ukraine? So what amount of money are you comfortable just continuing to give to Ukraine? Is there a dollar amount that you have in mind? Answer that.
I don't have a specific dollar amount. And the reason why is because if we let Ukraine fall, we are giving a signal to Russia that it's okay that they keep invading other sovereign nations, because we will eventually go back out. So that's a threat to like democracy all over, especially when it comes to like Eastern Europe. And then on top of that, China's also watching what we're doing with Ukraine. They're seeing that response and then they're seeing like, oh, if that's how they're responding to Russia, one of their largest adversaries, they're willing to funnel in money and weapons, because we have not sent soldiers, only money and weapons.
Yeah.
Can we get away with this in Taiwan? And if the answer is like, oh no, like they're going to pull out eventually, they're going to give up, then why can't we just do that to this nation, basically?
Great point. And a lot of people actually agree with you, a lot. But just be very clear. At what point do we say we are broke? It's kind of like, yo, I'm broke, but my friend keeps asking me for money, and now he's got issues. He can't pay his rent. So hey man, it's not right, but I'm broke. We're $34 trillion in debt. At what point do we say, guys, good luck out there. I am broke as fuck. I'll support you. I'll stunt for you. I'll say nice things about you. But I can't just keep sending you $100 billion checks. So if you actually care about America, you have to be like, 34 trillion in debt. At what point are we like, let's clean it up here? So is there a number in mind, or is it just like blank check?
I don't want to say it's blank check, but it is much larger. I think like there's no real price when it comes to like protecting democracy globally.
Well, the price is us being broke, and then we don't have any money to give anybody.
We're about $3.1 trillion in debt right now. We have the highest credit card capacity that we've ever had, I think, in this country. And actually, Putin said that himself in the interview, and he said they're not going to send people here, but we're apparently trying to send people to the Gaza Strip on some like naval situation going on. I don't know if you guys heard about that. Makes zero sense.
Well, they're trying to build a port in Gaza to give a humanitarian aid.
He stated that he would not invade any other countries unless NATO invaded Russia. So
anyway,
and you keep saying democracy. Ukraine doesn't even believe in democracy. Look at their last election. Didn't they implement martial law to keep Zelensky in that seat?
I'm not sure if you're referring to like after or before.
They didn't have an election in Ukraine the last cycle. They just said, nope, we're not doing the election. Zelensky's just going to stay in the head.
Cycle like basically when Russia was invading Ukraine?
No, it was before.
Okay, I'd have to see.
Here's what I'll say, because I want to move on to the last topic, because we got about 15, 20 minutes left. Do you know, this is facts, you can pull this up, probably Statista has this. Do you know the most corrupt country in the world, what it is? 2 years in a row, these guys are killing it. You know what it is? Russia. Russia is a kleptocracy. Putin is allegedly the richest man in the world. He's worth $200+ billion. I'm not in this like equivocation and binary. It's like, are we supporting? Are we not supporting? Russia, bad. But USA needs to basically take care of their own. But here's the little food for thought. Russia is European/Asian, right? Depending on but Moscow's in Europe. Do you know the second most corrupt country in Europe? Second most? Ukraine. So Ukraine is corrupt as fuck too. And don't you notice a similarity here? Why was Trump impeached? The phone call, Zelensky,
Russian
Ukraine,
collusion.
Russia. It goes so deep. And we're just here in America wearing our Ukraine pins and taking our pills at this point. And we're just like, I don't know, democracy. But it's kind of like the Tate thing. It's like, yeah, it sounds good on the surface, but like when you go down the rabbit hole, it's like, it's kind of a house of cards. Whoa, whoa, whoa. If you like that one, click right here to watch the full SOSCAST. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel.